3 years after first picking up this XJ Cherokee and 2 after Rob had driven it home, it's been doing pretty well out on the road. We did have to replace the fuel pump, crank sensor, alternator, gas tank, and muffler, but all things considered, it runs and drives just fine. Unfortunately, it's also quite adept at leaving puddles, particularly right now from the rear axle. It's clearly leaking from at least the plug, and Rob wasn't willing to stop driving through deep water, so we should probably address this. These differential covers seal with a rubber plug in the fill port, so we'll start by popping it out.
That does not seem like a good seal.
This is how it's supposed to be sealed.
Next up, we'll go around and loosen all 10 cover bolts.
Highway driving, you're not surprised.
These are pretty tight.
God.
Eventually, they were all loosened, and we could start removing them.
Oh, they just go to the bolts in our TV.
Okay, good.
That's why they were so stuck.
We'll take out all but 2 so that the cover doesn't go flying off.
It's all going up my sleeve. Ah!
But the extensive use of our TV was not making it easy to remove.
God. No, my God. Hey.
We'll give you another one.
Eventually, we managed to hammer a chisel between the cover and the housing
Oh, it's moving.
and break it loose.
There we go. There's the goo.
And it doesn't look like it was full of water.
We'll let that drain and take a closer look at what's left.
There probably is water in there.
Ah.
Because you see, it's kind of bubbling. There's some foaming there.
Oh, Christ.
I guess there's no magnet at all in there. The metal just hangs out.
Cool.
Overall, everything looks pretty good, and other than the large amount of our TV that needs to be removed, it doesn't seem like we have any big problems. While we're at it, we decided to change the oil in the front axle as well, and we'll start by making sure the fill plug will actually come out. With that broken loose, we'll leave it in place and start removing the cover bolts.
There's definitely our TV on the bolts.
Despite having to work around the steering components, it was actually easier to remove the bolts in the front, although there wasn't always a straight shot.
Got stacks on stacks on stacks of adapters. Theoretically, you could probably just turn the wheel and get it out of the way of this one. Or I could strip it out using all my adapters.
Again, we'll leave 2 bolts hanging in there
Chisel time.
and start tapping away.
It's just like a fine mist of rust coming up.
This one took a bit less effort than the rear, but was still pretty glued on.
This one looks even cleaner.
With the oil drained and the cover removed,
Once you're done with that one, you can clean this one.
we can see that fortunately it looks pretty decent in there. Once the RTV has been scraped off the covers, they are gonna get a scrub down in the parts washer.
There's like a 50-50 chance that this degreaser water is going to make these dirtier than they were.
While I worked on this, Rob was underneath the Jeep cleaning the RTV off the axle housings. The grease was coming off of the covers, but unfortunately under it was just a whole lot of rust. There aren't any holes in them yet, but if we left them alone, that wouldn't be the case forever. The original plan was just to cover them in rust converter, but we decided it would actually be faster and easier to set up the blasting cabinet. So we'll move the Jeep out of the way,
Oh, why did that roll so easy?
So we took all the fluid out.
I almost stepped in the drain pan.
and with that leaking out on the driveway, we'll get ready to sandblast the covers. As expected, this worked out really nicely and took us from this to this. There is a fair amount of pitting left behind from the rust, especially on that rear cover. This treatment was pretty elaborate considering how crusty the rest of the car is, but at least this way we can make them look good and ensure that they'll last. And as far as the leaking issue that brought us here in the first place, I decided to take an NPT tap and cut threads into the rear fill port. When cutting tapered threads, it's important to get the depth set just right for the plug you're looking to use, and I kinda screwed that up. This plug sits in there a little bit deep, but the Teflon tape should even that out. With that done, the covers will get a few coats of spray-on bed liner, and we'll let those sit out for an hour or so to dry. Despite the short time frame, they came out looking pretty nice. To go along with them, Rob painstakingly cleaned the threads on each and every bolt because they were all completely covered in RTV. Those came out nice and shiny, and with them ready, it's time to put the Jeep back together. Starting with a thorough brake cleaner spray down.
It's so clean! It would have made more sense to do that outside, huh?
Maybe?
Once that seems good enough, we'll ready the cover gaskets, which we purchased specifically because of how big of a pain the RTV was to clean up. We'll get the cover and gasket in place and start threading in bolts.
Okay, now we gotta coat all the bolts in RTV. More bolts!
All of them?
Yeah, give me all of them.
Give me lucky bolts.
We'll start snugging those down,
That doesn't sound like 25 foot-pounds.
and then, in a few steps, actually torque them down.
Well, I am sure glad I'm doing the front, not the back. Feel bad for whoever has to do that.
And with the front cover secured, it's time to repeat this process for the rear.
Oh, my eyes are gonna burn. Lots of things are gonna burn.
And no, we didn't learn any lessons.
Oh. Maybe just another quick huff. Make sure the gasket doesn't touch another part of the Jeep.
Why is this?
Because everything else is gross.
I picked the worst angle known to humankind. Yep, we'll just rub that around.
You want a big hammer? You can install it like the last guy.
Fortunately, we didn't have to resort to that, and eventually got all the bolts in.
One doesn't feel happy.
They don't have to be happy, they just have to go home.
Okay, good. That was a lot of oil dripping onto that exhaust there. Oh god, there's still a lot of oil dripping onto the exhaust. Holy shit.
Prior to this, there was an incident where a jug of used oil tipped over in the back of the Jeep and leaked everywhere, including through the floor onto the muffler.
Yeah, you're probably gonna smell that for a while. We should stop spilling fucking oil in the car.
No, f you. What do you know?
Anyway, back to tightening down the diff cover.
Oh god, I just tried to take the ratchet from me. Ow! Alright, torque wrench time. Oh, this one is so awkward. Mike, I hate you.
It's your damn car.
And fucking cover on the goddamn car. Alright, I figured it out. Back here. Ow!
Fortunately, Rob got the last of the bolts torqued without the immediate need for a trip to the hospital, and now we need to fill the axles back up with oil. And due to the limited clearance, it seemed like one of these big syringes was going to be our best bet.
Huh. That actually works better than I thought.
Oh boy, yep, this is gonna make a mess.
So what did we learn?
Install your lift kit before filling your differential. Can't tell if it's full yet.
I thought you were being very precise.
No.
Alright, well,
I don't know how much it's supposed to hold.
I don't know.
Now it's full, there we go.
Okay, good.
All that's left is to cap that off with our plug and Teflon tape,
Dare I make it tighter? No.
and once the excess oil is cleaned up, we're on to the front. This syringe method did work to fill both axles, although it was admittedly a bit messy.
Get me like 4 paper towels. Give me 3. 2. Take it or leave it.
We now have 2 filled and hopefully not leaking axles. It probably would have been just fine for a long time without us doing this, but now we know it's been done and it should be leaving one less puddle everywhere it goes. After this, the Jeep did well for about another month until I got a call from Rob saying it wouldn't start. It seemed pretty clear that it wasn't getting enough fuel, and we poked around for a bit before deciding to just pour in some gas. The gauge was showing 1/4 of a tank, and it had always been accurate before, but after adding 2 gallons, what do you know, it started right up like nothing was ever wrong. So it seems like either the gauge or the sender had just gotten stuck. Since then, the gauge has read down to empty, no problem, so I don't know, we're just gonna chalk that up to gremlins, I guess. And even though the Jeep was back to chugging along, the engine could probably use a bit more attention. After, of course, we addressed some high priority issues like the lack of cup holders. This is an aftermarket accessory that piggybacks onto 2 existing screws.
There's literally no clips or anything.
And it is simple, but it doesn't seem like a bad option for one of these cars.
Can you still do the park and brake? Okay.
That does not seem like it did anything.
Now that we've taken care of the important business, let's pop open the coolant reservoir and, ew. Yeah, not only is it pretty much empty, but it
Looks like a swamp.
Better or worse than the gas tank?
I mean, it's plastic, so it's not rusty, so better?
This thing could probably use a full coolant flush, but today we're just going to take off the reservoir and rinse it out. If we can get it off the car.
Drink more.
Why are you actively trying to strip it?
It's well, but
You want to ratchet? You want to ratchet?
Sure.
Eventually we do manage to get it loose,
Yeah, it's still liquid.
There is a liquid. I don't know if it's the one you want.
It's perfect.
Okay.
and we'll use a combination of degreaser, soapy water, and manual agitation to clean that out.
Substantially cleaner.
You can see the bottom now.
We'll drop it back into the car, but before we reattach it, we're going to give the engine a little tune-up. Back when we had to diagnose the failed crank sensor, we actually went through the ignition system and replaced the coil. And we noticed that the other parts were a bit old, but they were still working, so for the time being they stayed on. Until now, since Rob picked up a new cap, rotor, plugs, and wires. But it's not long before we encounter our first problem, which is that those spark plug wires do not want to leave their homes.
I don't think it wants to be tuned up.
You do it.
You just want me to break things. Can I have it? It's pulling the grips off of this.
Yeah.
Oh!
If you pull too hard.
Since we've got replacements, a broken wire is not a big deal, but we do still have to get the rest of it off the plug.
Got it. Watch this one remove flawlessly. Flawlessly.
We're watching.
You're not watching close enough.
Okay.
I'll show you how superior these engines are. Look,
It's almost off. Oh?
no.
Yeah, there's that. Hey, got it.
With all 6 off of there, we can disconnect the coil and fully remove the cap from the car. And we'll remove the rotor as well.
Is there a trick to it?
No.
Other than the color, the new rotor matches the old, as does the cap. Going by length and boot type, we'll match up the new wires to the old and get everything in its place. And of course, we won't forget to add dielectric grease. Next up, spark plug removal.
Please come out, please come out, please come out, please come out, please come out. Ow!
No big surprise that was pretty in there, but at least it is coming out.
Pretty old. That's a hell of a gap they got going there.
Yeah, that's not.
What's the gap supposed to be? 35. That is like 60 or 70.
Clearly, those are past their prime, so we'll remove the rest of the old spark plugs, put some anti-seize on the new ones, and thread them in. Once they've all been started, we'll go back through and torque them to 25 foot-pounds. Then on goes the new rotor and wired up cap. We'll get all the wires plugged in and...
Okay, do it. That's a no. 1, 5, 3, 6, 2, 4.
No, that's going to 5. That's 5.
Who would have thought that the engine runs better when the firing order is correct? Everything seems to be in order, so we'll reattach and refill the coolant reservoir.
Okay, you're at the minimum.
We just did a partial coolant flush.
Well, we didn't really take any out. Jeep already did that.
I don't know how it did it or why it did it, but it did it.
And the Jeep's ready to return to the road. It's a bit hard to say whether or not any of that tune-up actually improved anything, but it was certainly a good idea to put those old parts to rest. And even if you're not facing up to the biggest, most important projects, it is always a good time to gather around a car with friends and start taking things apart.
It's just so comfortable under here.
Just make sure that this part of the footage is sped up.
Oh god, yes. This would be light speed.
It's only 1:45. It's practically
It's not 1:45.
in the morning. Yes, sir. It is 1:42.
I don't believe you.
I think you told me what time it is and tired. I was okay before.
I'm sorry. I thought you would want to know.
I thought it was like 11.
No.